He thought he could brush off the warning. He believed the smoke and screams outside Los Angeles City Hall were just another political wave he'd ride out like before. But when Kash Patel stood at the podium, his gaze icy and voice steely, the room seemed to freeze. Gavin Newsom realized he'd lost control. What started as a heated argument quickly escalated into a storm of truth. With financial secrets exposed, trust shattered, and a career teetering on the edge, Patel had warned him. Newsom didn't listen. Now, the cost was painfully clear. In a sealed room at the FBI's Los Angeles headquarters, the glow of a computer screen lit up Kash Patel's resolute face. Numbers and financial charts danced across the monitor, each line telling a story he was determined to uncover. Special Agent Rachel Flores, with sharp eyes and a thick stack of documents in hand, stood before Patel. Her voice was steady but laced with urgency. "We have a trail," she said, pointing to a bank transaction line. "Global Horizon Institute, Switzerland." The money flowed through 3 shell organizations before reaching Civic Horizon LA. "This isn't small change, Sir Flores added." Patel nodded, his fingers gliding over the desk as if sketching an invisible strategy. "They thought they could hide in the shadows," he said, his voice low but cutting. "Bring it to light." Flores and her investigative team had worked relentlessly for 3 days, tracing transactions from Switzerland through anonymous accounts in the Cayman Islands, then funneling into a California nonprofit called Civic Horizon LA. This organization, outwardly a group advocating for immigration rights, showed signs of funding violent protests. A leaked recording obtained by an FBI agent revealed Raul Mendoza, Civic Horizon's director, discussing coordinating protests to send a message to Washington. Patel listened to the recording, his eyes fixed on the speaker. "This isn't random," he muttered. "This is a plan." Across the city, Sarah Clay sat in her cramped apartment, the laptop's glow highlighting the weary lines on her face. An anonymous email had just hit her inbox, attached with a dense file, wire transfer receipts, internal emails, and a list of international donors to Civic Horizon. She skimmed it, her heart racing as she grasped the scale of the issue. "If this is true, all of California will shake," she told herself. Without hesitation, Sarah contacted a colleague at the newsroom, requesting a cross-check of the data. By midnight, she published her first article titled "Foreign Money Behind Los Angeles Riots." The piece spread like wildfire the next morning. Patel appeared at a press conference in downtown Los Angeles, standing before the FBI emblem carved into a wooden podium. Cameras flashed, the air heavy as if before a battle. "The FBI has uncovered evidence that non-profit organizations in California, including Civic Horizon LA, received foreign funding to incite violence," he declared, his voice resolute. He held up a printed bank transaction, numbers marked in red. "These entities have ties to state authorities, and we will not stop until the truth is exposed." His final words hit like a gunshot, sparking an explosion of questions from the crowd of reporters. In Sacramento, Gavin Newsom watched the press conference on a large screen in his office, his face darkening. His close advisor Jake Miller stood nearby, gripping his phone tightly. "They don't have anything concrete linking to us," Miller said, but his voice lacked conviction. Newsom turned, his eyes sharp as knives. "If there's even a single grain of sand out of place, Jake, I need to know now." Miller shook his head, but his silence spoke louder than words. Newsom knew he was standing on a tightrope, and Patel was holding the scissors. Meanwhile, at the Capitol, Congresswoman Sofia Rivera held a brief press conference, her voice brimming with outrage. "Kash Patel is weaponizing the FBI for Trump's political agenda," she said, pointing directly at the cameras. "These accusations are a farce meant to smear California and cover up the failures of federal immigration policy." But Marcus Holt, a conservative congressman, fired back in a post. "Patel is doing what Newsom won't, protecting America from chaos." The political divide deepened, turning Los Angeles into a battleground of ideologies. Sarah Clay, unbound by partisan lines, kept digging. She contacted another anonymous source, who revealed that Jake Miller had met Raul Mendoza at a fundraising event in San Francisco. A grainy video sent via encrypted emails showed the two exchanging documents in a secluded hotel corner. Sarah knew this was kindling that could burn both sides. She decided to hold the video, waiting for the right moment to release it. But her second article, detailing the money trail from Switzerland, was enough to set public opinion ablaze. Protest groups gathered outside City Hall, some demanding justice for Maria Alvarez, others calling for Patel's resignation. In the FBI office, Patel summoned Flores and her team. We need the name behind Global Horizon, he ordered, his voice unwavering. I want every transaction, every email, every call. If Newsom knew even a fraction, he'll pay the price. Flores nodded, but her eyes flickered with concern. Sir, if we push too far, the public might turn on us. Maria Alvarez's story is still dominating everything. Patel paused, gazing out the window at the city's twinkling lights. I'm not here to be liked, he said. I'm here to do what's right. The hearing room at the Capitol was packed, the air stifling like a tightly coiled furnace. Light from chandeliers gleamed on polished wooden chairs where Congress members sat upright, their faces tense like chess pieces on a board. Live television cameras panned slowly across the crowd of reporters, activists, and breathless spectators. At the center, Chairwoman Ellen Vargas, her silver hair neatly pinned, struck the gavel. Her voice resounded. We are here to find the truth, not to play political games. But no one in that room was naive enough to believe politics could be sidelined. Kash Patel stepped in, his navy suit pristine, his gaze sharp as a blade. He sat down, hands resting on a neatly arranged stack of documents. Across from him, Gavin Newsom, in a simple yet calculated white dress shirt, tried to maintain composure. Their eyes met like two fighters before the bell. Patel spoke first, his voice low but cutting through the room. The FBI has irrefutable evidence that non-profit organizations tied to California's government received foreign funds to incite violence in Los Angeles. He pushed a small screen forward, where a video began to play. The screen showed Jake Miller, Newsom's close advisor, in a dimly lit cafe. His voice, though distorted, was clear as he spoke to an unidentified figure. We need this protest bigger, stronger. They won't be able to ignore it. The hearing room buzzed, whispers spreading like ripples. Patel didn't pause. He presented a financial chart, red arrows tracing the money flow from Global Horizon Institute through Civic Horizon LA and ultimately to protest organizing groups. This is no accident, Patel said, his voice resolute. This is a carefully planned conspiracy, and the FBI demands a full investigation into Governor Newsom's administration. Newsom, the outwardly calm, felt the pressure like a boulder on his chest. He stood, hands braced on the table, looking straight at Vargas. What Director Patel is presenting is a blatant attempt to smear California, he said, his voice low but charged with emotion. I fired Jake Miller the moment I suspected his actions. I knew nothing of these transactions, and I challenged the FBI to produce any evidence directly linking me. He paused, scanning the room, trying to reclaim sympathy. California stands for justice, for people like Maria Alvarez, not for troublemakers. But Newsom's words couldn't quell the storm. Congressman Marcus Holt, a conservative with a voice like thunder, stood up. Governor Newsom, you've refused to open the state's financial records without a court order. What does that say? Holt pointed at Patel. Director Patel is doing what you won't, protecting this country from those who want to tear it apart. Old supporters in the crowd applauded, but Sofia Rivera, her eyes blazing, cut in. This is a witch hunt, she said, her voice sharp as a blade. Patel is turning the FBI into a tool for a political agenda. He doesn't care about the truth, only about destroying opponents. The hearing room erupted in arguments, Vargas pounding the gavel to restore order. Backstage, Sarah Clay sat among the reporters, her pen racing across her notebook. She knew the Miller video was a bombshell, but she held another weapon, a second unreleased video showing Miller meeting Raul Mendoza at a fundraising event. She decided to hold it, waiting for the perfect moment to release it. But her latest article, detailing the Swiss money trail, had already set the public ablaze. Sarah felt the weight of the truth she held, but she also knew it could burn everything down. In the hearing room, Patel remained unfazed by the criticism. He turned to Rivera, his voice calm but forceful. The FBI doesn't work for any party. We work for the truth. If Congresswoman Rivera has evidence of any FBI misconduct, present it. Otherwise, let us do our job. His words silenced Rivera, though her eyes still burned with defiance. Patel continued, presenting another FBI report detailing how Civic Horizon LA used funds to hire professional protest groups, even supplying homemade weapons. This isn't protest for justice, he said. This is an organized attack on order. Newsom, feeling his foundation crumble, tried to regain the upper hand. He turned to Vargas, his voice laden with emotion. I agree that troublemakers must be punished, but I ask Congress to investigate both sides. If there's wrongdoing, I'll take responsibility. But don't let the stories of people like Maria Alvarez be forgotten in this political fight. His words drew scattered applause, but the skeptical looks from the audience showed his credibility was eroding. Vargas, with the calm of someone seasoned by storms, closed the hearing with a statement. Congress will expand the investigation, not just into Civic Horizon but into all related organizations. The truth will come to light. As the hearing room cleared, Patel left with steady steps, but he knew the battle was far from over. Newsom, standing alone in a corner, gazed out the window, sensing the shadow of what was coming. Outside, Los Angeles simmered. Protest groups gathered before City Hall, some holding signs supporting Maria, others demanding Patel's resignation. Sarah Clay, leaving the Capitol, checked her email and found a new message from her anonymous source. There's more. Checked Mendoza's offshore accounts. She knew she was closing in on a truth that could change everything. Meanwhile, Maria Alvarez, at home, prepared for her upcoming congressional testimony. She didn't want to be the storm center, but she knew her voice was now the only flame that could light the path forward. Sunlight filtered through the high windows of the congressional hearing room, casting faint streaks on the marble floor. The air was heavy, as if every breath carried the weight of a divided nation. Maria Alvarez stepped in, her worn shoes clicking on the floor. Clutching a small photo of Camila, she wore a simple blue shirt, her hair neatly tied back, but her eyes, both resolute and fragile, silenced the room. Cameras focused on her, but Maria didn't look at them. She looked at Chairwoman Ellen Vargas, who nodded encouragingly. Maria sat down, taking a deep breath to quell the trembling rising in her chest. Vargas spoke, her voice warm but authoritative. Miss Alvarez, we've invited you here to share your story. We want to understand what happened not just in Los Angeles, but to people like you across the country. Maria nodded, placing Camila's photo on the table like a talisman. As she began to speak, her voice was soft but clear like a stream, weaving through stone. I came to America for a better life for my daughter, Camila, she said. I never wanted trouble, but one night they broke down our door, pointed guns at us. She was only 8. Now she's afraid to sleep alone. She recounted the ice raid, each detail like a deep-cut door splintering. Camila screams. The cold eyes of the agents. She paused, blinking back tears, then continued. I don't know if they made a mistake or meant it, but I know my daughter will carry this scar for life. I don't want any other family to go through that. The hearing room fell silent, only the scratch of reporters' pens audible. Sarah Clay, seated in the back, stopped writing, struck by the power of those simple words. Congresswoman Sofia Rivera, her eyes full of empathy, asked the first question. Miss Alvarez, what do you think we should do to prevent mistakes like this? Maria paused, her hand gently brushing Camila's photo. I'm not a politician, she said, but I think people should be treated like humans, not criminals, just for being different. We need clear laws, so families like mine don't live in fear. Her words, simple but sharp, made Rivera nod, jotting down notes quickly. Marcus Holt, his voice stern, interjected. Miss Alvarez, are you aware that many believe strict immigration policies are necessary to protect the country? Maria looked straight at him, unflinching. I understand that, but protecting the country doesn't mean hurting children. Camila is American, born here. She deserves to feel safe. Her response silenced Holt, his eyes briefly reflective. Kash Patel, seated in the corner, listened to every word. His face remained impassive, but his hand stopped tapping the taboo, rare sign of hesitation. After Maria finished, Vargas invited him to speak. Patel stood, adjusting his tie, his voice calm but weighty. Miss Alvarez's story is a reminder that our system isn't perfect. The FBI has ordered a review of all ICE raids to ensure no mistakes are repeated. But I must emphasize, the law exists to protect us all. If we let emotions override, those who want to destabilize the country will exploit it. His words drew murmurs, but Maria didn't react. She just looked at Camila's photo, as if it were her sole source of strength. Gavin Newsom, his face weary but striving for sincerity, stood. Mrs. Alvarez, I'm sorry for what you and your daughter went through, he said, his voice low. California is committed to protecting immigrant communities. I'll work with Congress to ensure these mistakes don't happen again. But his words rang like a belated promise. Sarah Clay, watching from afar, noticed Newsom's evasive glance. He knew his credibility was slipping, and Maria's story only deepened the cracks. That's Maria left the witness stand. A spontaneous round of applause broke out, not loud, but heartfelt. She bowed her head, clutching the photo, and walked out, feeling as if a weight had lifted. But she also knew her journey wasn't over. On X, her testimony video spread, tagged with #MariaSpeaks. Some called her a hero. Others criticized her, but her voice had changed the game. It forced both Patel and Newsom to face reality. Policies aren't just numbers, they're people. Like Maria and CAMILA. Sarah Clay, leaving the hearing room, checked her phone and saw a new message from her anonymous source. Mendoza didn't act alone. Check Miller's emails. She knew she held a critical piece of the puzzle, but she also sensed the danger. Meanwhile, Patel returned to the FBI office, ordering Rachel Flores to accelerate the investigation into Raul Mendoza. "We need the name at the top," he said, his voice unwavering. "Maria Alvarez deserves the truth, and so does America." Dawn broke over Los Angeles, pale golden light filtering through the high-rises, but it couldn't dispel the darkness enveloping the city. In a narrow alley near downtown, FBI vehicles quietly surrounded Alori's office, the faded logo of Civic Horizon LA still hanging on the glass door. Special Agent Rachel Flores, in black tactical gear, signaled her team. The door burst open. Shouts ringing out, "FBI, hands up." Raul Mendoza, Civic Horizon's director, was handcuffed before the stunned eyes of his staff. A nearby news crew's cameras captured the scene, and within hours, images of Mendoza being led away spread across social media. In the FBI office, Kash Patel stood before a large screen, watching security footage of the arrest. He twirled a pen in his hand, his eyes fixed on Mendoza's panicked face. Flores strode in, tossing a new stack of documents onto the desk. "We have Mendoza's emails," she said, her voice firm. "He was in contact with an account in Geneva, discussing escalating the protests. But here's the thing, some of the funds didn't just go to Civic Horizon. They're spread across organizations tied to both parties." Patel stopped twirling, the pen, his gaze sharpening. "Both parties?" he asked. Flores nodded. "Yes, sir. This isn't just a California problem." Meanwhile, Sarah Clay sat in a small cafe, her laptop open, her eyes glued to a new email from her anonymous source. The attached documents were a goldmine bank transactions, showing not only Civic Horizon but also organizations linked to both Democrats and Republicans had received funds from the Global Horizon Institute. An internal email from Jake Miller, Newsom's former advisor, revealed he knew about the funds but deliberately concealed them. Sarah took a deep breath, realizing she held a bomb that could demolish the credibility of the entire political system. She wrote a new article titled "Los Angeles Scandal: Dirty Money Touches Both Parties." When it published, social media erupted with #CorruptionUnmasked, accompanied by calls for an independent investigation. In Sacramento, Gavin Newsom watched the news, his face pale. He slammed his hand on the desk, turning to his new advisor. "Emily Chen, who let this get so far?" he asked, his voice trembling with anger and fear. Chen, her face calm but eyes tense, replied, "Governor, we need to go public with everything before Patel does. If you're seen as hiding, your career is over." Newsom nodded, but his gaze drifted into the distance, as if confronting a growing shadow. In Washington, Patel faced unprecedented pressure. Congresswoman Sofia Rivera held a press conference, her voice brimming with outrage. Kash Patel knew about these funds from the start, but only targeted California to serve Trump's agenda, she accused, her hand slicing through the air. "The FBI is not a personal tool," but Marcus Holt, in a televised interview, defended Patel. "Director Patel is cleaning the system, no matter who's implicated. If both parties are involved, that only proves he's right." The divide deepened, turning Patel into a hero to some, a manipulator to others. Patel, unbothered by the criticism, summoned Flores and the investigative team. "I want every transaction from Global Horizon traced to its source," he ordered, his voice unwavering. "If both parties took money, we'll expose it all. No one is above the law." Flores nodded, but her eyes flickered with concern. "Sir, this could spark a political firestorm. Congress won't forgive us if they think we're targeting them." Patel looked straight at her. "I'm not here to make friends, I'm here to do what's right." Sarah Clay, meanwhile, received a new message from her anonymous source. "Press conference tonight. Don't miss it." She knew Patel was about to land another blow, and she decided to attend. In the packed press room, Patel stepped to the podium, camera flashes lighting up his face. "The FBI has arrested Raul Mendoza on charges of conspiring to incite violence and money laundering," he declared. "We also have evidence that organizations tied to both parties received funds from foreign sources. I call on Congress to form an independent committee to investigate the entire political finance system." His words hit like an earthquake, sparking a flurry of questions in the room. In East Los Angeles, Maria Alvarez watched the press conference on an old TV, her heart torn. She didn't want her story swept into the political divide. But she also knew the truth Patel and Sarah were uncovering was necessary. Camila, sitting beside her, asked, "Mom, will everything be okay?" Maria hugged her, whispering, "I hope so, my love." But inside, she sensed a bigger storm approaching. At the Capitol, Ellen Vargas called an emergency meeting with leaders from both parties. "We cannot let this scandal destroy public trust," she said, her voice firm. "I propose an independent investigative committee, and I want both Patel and Newsom to testify." Her proposal gained reluctant agreement. But no one knew where the outcome would lead. White light from studio lamps shone down on the stage at the Los Angeles Convention Center, casting a warm glow in the vast space. The seats were filled from immigrant families, two activists, reporters, and ordinary citizens, all eager to witness the moment. On stage, a long table held 5 chairs. Ellen Vargas sat at the center, with Kash Patel and Gavin Newsom on either side. Maria Alvarez sat next to Patel, and Roberto Castillo, a legal resident once mistaken by ICE, sat at the end. A large screen behind them flashed the words, "Public Forum Toward Justice and Reform." The air hummed with anticipation and tension, like a song awaiting its crescendo. Vargas, in an elegant gray suit, opened with a calm but resolute tone. "We gather today to dialogue, not to accuse," she said, her eyes sweeping the audience. "Los Angeles has endured too much pain. It's time to listen and act." The audience clapped lightly, but their eyes remained fixed on the stage, waiting to see if words could heal or only deepen the wounds. Roberto Castillo spoke first. A weathered auto mechanic, he recounted the night ICE knocked on his door, mistaking him for someone else. "I was born here, pay taxes, and raised 3 kids, he said, his voice thick with emotion, "but they treated me like a criminal. I want the law to protect us, not destroy us." His story, simple yet weighty, silenced the audience. Some wiped away tears. Maria Alvarez, seated beside him, gripped her hands under the table to stay calm. When Vargas invited her to speak, Maria took a deep breath, her eyes meeting the audience. "I don't want anyone to feel the fear my daughter feels," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "Camila's scared of the dark now, scared of a knock at the door. I'm not asking for favors, just a fair system, so we can live like humans." Her words swept through the audience like a breeze. A woman in the front row raised her hand, shouting, "We stand with you, Maria." Thunderous applause erupted, and Maria smiled for the first time that evening. Gavin Newsom, his face weary but striving for sincerity, stood up. "I hear these stories, and I feel ashamed," he said, his voice low. "California has failed. To protect people like Miss Alvarez and Mr. Castillo, I commit to transparency and will work with Congress to reform immigration." He paused, looking directly at the audience. "But we must also admit the violence in Los Angeles helps no one. We need unity, not division." His words drew some applause, but also murmurs from those skeptical of his motives. CashPatel.com, but with a piercing gaze, waited his turn. He stood, adjusted the microphone, and his voice rang clear like a vow. "The FBI isn't targeting immigrant communities," he said. "We're targeting those who exploit chaos to destabilize the country. But I agree our immigration system needs fixing. I've ordered a review of all ICE procedures to ensure no one is harmed by mistakes." He turned to Maria, his eyes softening briefly. "Miss Alvarez, I can't promise perfection, but I promise to do what's right." His words surprised the room, prompting silence, then scattered applause. Sarah Cleaney in the press row jotted down, "Patel's playing a smart move." Vargas opened the floor for audience questions. A young man, introducing himself as a law student, stood. "Director Patel, how can we trust the FBI isn't politicized when you openly support one side?" Patel replied unflinching, "The FBI serves the truth, not parties. If I target anyone, it's because of evidence, not feelings." His response earned nods from some, but others shook their heads, still skeptical. An older woman, identifying as the mother of an immigrant, asked, "Newsom, what will you do specifically to protect people like Maria?" Newsom answered, his voice firmer, "We'll propose state legislation requiring ICE to coordinate with local authorities before any raids, and I'll push for a legal aid fund for immigrant families." His promises drew applause, but Maria's eyes remained wary. She wanted to believe, but she'd heard too many promises. The dialogue stretched on. at times tense but gradually becoming a space for sharing. A man spoke of losing his job over protests. A young girl shared her dream of becoming a doctor despite lacking papers. Vargas listened, took notes, and concluded with a statement. Congress is drafting the Financial Transparency and Immigration Reform Act. Your stories will shape it. The audience stood, applauding, feeling a glimmer of hope. Sarah Clinney, leaving the forum, checked her email and saw a new message. Final documents check, Global Horizons accounts. She knew she was on the cusp of a bigger truth. Meanwhile, Maria returned home, holding Camila as she slept, feeling a spark of hope. Patel, driving back to the FBI office, gazed out the window, reflecting on Maria's words. Newsom, in his dimly lit office, wrote a memo, determined to regain trust. The sunset draped Los Angeles in a gentle orange glow, as if the city were breathing again after days of suffocation. Streets once choked with smoke now glowed with new murals depicting intertwined hands, a symbol of unity. In the congressional meeting room, light from the windows illuminated weary but determined faces. Ellen Vargas, with a steady voice, declared, "The Financial Transparency and Immigration Reform Act has passed with a majority vote." Applause rang out, not loud, but filled with hope. The act mandated stricter financial oversight and improved immigration processes, ensuring no one would suffer mistakes like those Maria Alvarez endured. Kash Patel sat in his FBI office, his eyes scanning the final report he just completed. The hundreds of pages detailing every transaction from Global Horizon Institute were his legacy. Though criticized for his hardline stance, Patel was credited with exposing a vast corruption network. He looked out the window at Los Angeles' twinkling lights and whispered to himself, "The truth is always worth it." But he knew his reputation remained divisive. Some called him a hero, others a troublemaker. Gavin Newsom, in his Sacramento office, faced the mirror. His eyes were heavy. His credibility had taken a deep hit after the Jake Miller scandal, but he chose to confront it in a public address. He pledged transparency, releasing all state financial records and supporting immigrant families. "We were wrong, but we will make it right," he said, his voice resolute. Still, his path to restoring trust was long. Maria Alvarez stood before a community center in East Los Angeles, where she now volunteered. She had been granted legal residency, a small but meaningful victory. Camila beside her held a crayon redrawing murals once trampled. "Mom, I want to draw a house," she said, her smile radiant. Maria smiled, her heart lighter. No longer a victim, she was a symbol of resilience, helping other families find their way. Sarah Clay, in her small office, finished her final article on the scandal. She released the last video, showing calls between Raul Mendoza and a mysterious figure. In Switzerland, her article spurred an independent investigative committee, ensuring no one from politicians to organizations escaped accountability. On social media, she posted, "The truth isn't always pleasant, but it's the only light we have." The post garnered thousands of shares. Los Angeles began to heal. Community centers sprang up. Town halls drew hundreds from immigrants to longtime residents, rebuilding trust together. The city, once a battleground, became a beacon of hope. Maria, standing before the new mural, felt the power of her voice. Patel, Newsom, and Sarah, each in their own way, had pushed the wheel of change. The story, Kash Patel warned him, "Now it's too late for Gavin Newsom," reflects the pressing issues facing the United States today, from political division and immigration debates to transparency in the political system. In the story, Los Angeles is engulfed in riots sparked by ICE raids, highlighting the tension between strict immigration policies and human rights, as seen in the case of Maria Alvarez, who was harmed by a mistaken raid. The confrontation between Kash Patel and Gavin Newsom, alongside Sarah Clay's revelations about illicit money flows, exposes how a lack of transparency and abuse of power can erode public trust. The public forum and the Financial Transparency and Immigration Reform Act ultimately bring hope, but only through the courage of individuals like Maria and Sarah to speak out. The lesson is that in a polarized society like today's United States, truth and dialogue are key to healing. Americans from immigrant communities to decision-makers must learn to listen like Vargas, speak out like Maria, and relentlessly pursue the truth like Sarah. Instead of letting hashtags divide us, we should hold community forums where every voice is respected, as in the Stories Forum. More importantly, each person must take personal responsibility, as Newsom did in admitting mistakes, and act for the common good, as Patel did in committing to improve ICE processes. In real life, this means actively engaging in local issues, voting responsibly, and supporting transparent, fair policies. Only when each person dares to speak and listen can the United States overcome division to build a united future. Subscribe to the channel to follow the journey of seeking truth and justice for people like Maria Alvarez. Thank you for watching.